As you've heard on Bridge City News, travel restrictions are being lifted, allowing unvaccinated Canadians to board a plane or train once again here in Canada. Now, to discuss this in more detail is political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, joining us once again from Toronto. Brian, you've talked to key people who say this was recommended a while ago, but the government refused to act. Why?
Well, it comes down to the science, but it's political science and not medical science, Hal. That's the big difference between now and when this was recommended. I've spoken to people in the travel industry, airlines specifically, were told back in March, these restrictions that are going to be causing you problems, those will be lifted by May 1st. Of course, that didn't happen. Basically, it came down to bureaucrats being ready to lift these restrictions. Dr. Tam, if you read between the lines in what she has said, she was asked last week several times, what have you recommended to government? Do these things need to still be in place? She wouldn't say yes, she wouldn't say no, but she talked about how, well, when we put them in, it was during the Delta wave. Things were very different. Omicron changed everything. You can't really stop transmission with the vaccines with Omicron the way that, to the degree that we could with Delta. And so things have changed. That was essentially her saying she didn't see the need for these restrictions to be in place anymore. But Prime Minister Trudeau was still defending this on Friday. He was asked about it when he was in Los Angeles at the Summit of the Americas, where he caught COVID, by the way. He did not say, well, you raise a good point. He didn't say to the journalist, you raise a good point, and these are constantly under review. No, he talked about why they were needed, why they needed to be in place. The pandemic's not over, and we believe in science, not like the Conservatives. This was and has been only about owning the Conservatives, showing that he's different, that he cares about these things. That's all it's been about for a long time now.
Brian, it appears as though Prime Minister Justin Trudeau may have used many matters relating to COVID-19 as a political tool. Now, you recently wrote that the Prime Minister makes sure he wears a mask in the House of Commons, but not while meeting with top Democrats in the U.S., as you just mentioned here, the Summit of the Americas. Why the difference?
Again, it comes back to the political science rather than the medical. We haven't had mask. The House of Commons sits in Ontario. We have not had a requirement to wear masks indoors, except in certain settings, for months. By the way, those certain settings we lifted on Saturday, and those were if you were riding public transit, if you were in a long-term care home where people are vulnerable, or in a hospital. And by the way, many hospitals and long-term care centers are still saying, look, we want you to wear a mask. That's fully understandable. Sick people, vulnerable people, but there's no reason to wear one in the House of Commons, and yet he makes a show of doing it when he's in the parliamentary precinct. But if he's out and about, he doesn't. Just last week, he was in Ottawa with the Chilean president, Gabriel Boric, and in official photos and around the parliamentary precinct, he's wearing a mask with the Chilean president. Yet they released photos of him out at a bar, the two of them leaning into each other, having a quiet conversation, Hal. No masks on. He goes down to the United States. He meets with Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker. He meets with California Governor Gavin Newsom. He goes on a podcast sitting in a small room with two former senior Obama advisors, sits with them for half an hour, very close to each other. No masks. What's the difference? Well, it's about showing that the Conservatives don't care about public health measures when he's in Canada, but yucking it up with his friends who are left-wing Democrats when he's in the United States. That's what this is all about.
Now, Brian, one of the big issues the Trudeau Liberals have failed to deal with is passports, long lineups, and delays at the airports. Now they say they were finally taking action. What exactly are the feds doing?
Well, they're going to let you know how long you have to wait to get passports, and they're saying that they're going to, work at reducing the backlog. But to tell you how horrible it is, you used to be able to go and get a passport, and within a week or so, it would show up. You didn't have to pay extra for that. That was just standard service. In my view, Passport Canada was one of the best run departments in the federal government. And I say that as someone who lived in Ottawa a long time. I've spent a lot of time covering the successes and failures of government departments. Passport Canada worked pre-COVID. Now it doesn't work. And the minister's bragging that 72% of people get their passport within 40 days. Well, you used to get it, as I said, within about a week without paying extra. Now, expedited service, you're still going to wait several days to get your passport. This is a system that's broken. You've got people lining up hours at a time, 3 hours in Ottawa. I believe it's 4.5 or more in Vancouver, more than 3 hours in Toronto. I'm not sure how long it is in Calgary, but of course, there's other issues being dealt with in Calgary right now. But it has been a disaster. And the government has tried to say, well, it's because more people want to travel because we're opening up. Well, you should have known that was coming. You were in charge of the travel restrictions. You were in charge of so much of what's going on, and you haven't managed this properly. This is just another example of the Trudeau government putting in ministers who can't handle their files. The department is at fault here, but when the department's not working right, it's up to the minister to fix things. They haven't done it. Trudeau hasn't asked for resignations. He hasn't shuffled his cabinet.
Yeah, the immigration department has also been under fire recently, Brian, for delays. Now, you looked at figures and found that it can take almost 4 years to process a skilled tradesperson looking to come to Canada. What's driving that kind of delay, especially when we have such a shortage of workers across the country?
Yeah, you talk to anybody in any industry, and they'll tell you there's a shortage of workers, especially skilled trades, which are in short supply. It's part of why the Ford government here in Ontario has a big emphasis on trying to get young people to take up the skilled trades because we need people to build things, to make things, to keep the economy going. We can't get enough people coming into the country to do it. We need to train more here. But if you're a skilled tradesperson trying to come to Canada, it's almost 4 full years. It's 43 months. I'll tell you this, my parents came to Canada in 1968. My dad was a tradesman. And I asked my mother the other day when I saw these figures, how long did it take you to be processed? That's just the processing time, by the way. She said it was a couple of months. Between the time when they applied and the time they were told they could come to Canada, it was a few months. Now, they ended up waiting a little while longer. Just for personal reasons, but it was less than a year for them to do it. And half of that delay was getting their own house in order, getting their own life together to be able to immigrate to this country. If you're a business person that wants to go in through this program that Quebec has, that is expedited for business class investors, people that will bring money and create jobs, it's 64 months, Hal. For a provincial nominee. So the government of Alberta says, we need people in this industry. The Express program is 21 months. That's almost
how
2
about for
years.
doctors? What have we heard for doctors? Such a shortage of doctors across the country right now, especially here in Alberta.
Well, they would be either in the provincial nominee program or there's another program, not for skilled tradespeople, but skilled workers. So they'd be in one of those two streams. So it's between 2 and 3 years for that. And then when they get here, the question is, will the provincial agencies that regulate doctors actually acknowledge their credentials when they get here? And we know that that's often not the case, even when they've been trained in countries with very similar medical procedures and standards and training regimens as we have.
Now, Brian, we are one step closer to the federal government controlling what we read, watch, or listen to online. Bill C-11 is going to give the CRTC that much more power. What are the real implications of this bill?
Yeah, Bill C-11, they invoked closure, so the opposition wanted to continue to debate it. They said, no more debate. We're putting this to a vote. So the government has the votes. It's going to pass. Elizabeth May, the Green Party leader, is she this week? Is she not? I'm not sure. But Elizabeth May's been around Parliament Hill a long time. She said that their decision to shut down debate on this bill was worse than anything she's seen in her time in Parliament. And she was a harsh critic of the Harper government. Now, this is a bill, Hal, that will give the Canadian Radio and Telecommunications Commission, the CRTC, the power to regulate what you see, what you read, what you watch, what you listen to online. Now, they'll say, oh, no, that's not the case. We're not going to regulate in that way. They have a thing called discoverability, where you've got to make sure that Canadian artists are discoverable. Well, let's say that you like listening to audiobooks or you like listening to podcasts. The service that you subscribe to for that will have to be inserting Canadian material. Maybe you want it, but maybe you don't. Maybe you just like true crime. True crime is very popular for both audiobooks and podcasts. So let's pick that genre. Let's say you just want to keep listening to these crime podcasts. Well, you're going to be forced to listen to or hear about Canadian content on that. They're giving them such broad powers without a lot of guidance that we don't know what the CRTC is going to do with it. But their ability to regulate, their ability to say, you must consume Canadian content, like the 30% on the radio that we have, that could come into play. The CRTC could make that decision on their own, given the way this bill is written, and we would have no recourse to it. Uh, Many Canadian artists say this will actually hurt them rather than help them in the online world, which has opened up markets across the globe to anybody sitting with an apparatus like I have right now, my webcam, my computer. It's opened up the entire globe for you to be able to create content, post it, find an audience, and make a living.
Brian, you were among the first to report on the incredible amount of membership sold in the CPC leadership race. You uncovered that in the final days of membership sales, the party actually broke records. What kind of numbers are we talking about? And why do you think the leadership candidates were able to sell so many memberships?
Well, obviously, there's a great deal of interest in the Conservative Party of Canada right now because it's not just Pierre Poilievre who, his campaign says they sold 311,000. It's not just Patrick Brown, whose campaign says sold 150,000. In total, the party says they've got more than 600,000 members. Back in March, it was around 142,000. So it's a lot of membership sold. And I'm told by senior party officials that in the last 3 days, it was 100,000 memberships.
Wow.
Last 3 days. That is remarkable. Many parties would wish to have that many members, that many people they could call on for a donation or to put a lawn sign up or what have you. So those are staggering figures. And it just goes to show that there is an appetite for looking at alternatives to the current Liberal government. And with all the things we've just talked about, I think we showed a lot of reasons why maybe the government should be reconsidered in terms of who's in charge.
Brian, with the Poilievre camp selling just shy of 312,000 memberships, can anyone other than Pierre Poilievre win this race? And if he does win, can he also defeat the Trudeau Liberals?
Well, I've always said that Pierre Poilievre could defeat Justin Trudeau in a head-on-head election. I'm not saying he will for sure. Like, my caveat is always campaigns matter, and so it would depend on how well Pierre campaigned, how well Justin campaigned, what issues they brought to the table, and who had the better run at it. But Pierre Poilievre definitely could. In fact, I also think Jean Charest could beat Pierre Poilievre. I'm not sure about Patrick Brown. I haven't thought of that, but there is obviously an appetite for change. And those are the only three that have a possibility of winning this leadership race at this point. Now, can or will Pierre Poilievre win it? If you take all of their numbers at face value, and we have to because we can't verify it, it's hard to see how he doesn't win. But there's going to be a lot of challenges. We've already seen from Leslyn Lewis and others saying Pierre Poilievre was sending misleading emails in the dying days of the campaign, including telling people that had already registered that their membership wasn't complete and they had to buy a new one. So there's going to be a lot of duplicates. There's going to be challenges on whether someone is actually allowed to be a member. We'll have a better sense. But Pierre Poilievre has to win or come close to winning on the first ballot to take this. If he's below 45% of total points after the first ballot, he's, according to people who understand this system far better than I do, below 45% becomes incredibly hard for him to win. The closer he is to 40, the less chance he has of winning.
Brian, do you think some of the other candidates will start putting their support behind Pierre Poilievre? Maybe somebody like Leslyn Lewis or Roman Baber?
I could see Roman Baber or his supporters going to Pierre Poilievre. With Leslyn Lewis, at the beginning of the race, I would have said, sure, that's the likely second choice. But she's gone hard after Pierre Poilievre. Partly, I think, because she knows that a lot of the people that backed her last time on first ballot are now with the Poilievre camp. So she wants to ensure that the people she still has stay with her. And I think she's trying to say, vote Lewis first and don't rank anybody else. I don't think she wants her support going. She knows that she helped make Erin O'Toole leader the last time, and it didn't work out well for social conservatives. I think she wants to say, show that social conservatives matter, but don't make somebody else the king. because they'll turn around and basically renege on any promises later on.
And the federal Tories choose their new leader in September. Should be interesting to see how this plays out. Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.